If your surname is on this list, your family didn't just come from England. It came from a specific kingdom, one of the rival, warring, independent kingdoms that existed centuries before England was ever one country. 10 surnames, 10 bloodlines, and by the end of this video, you will know which medieval kingdom your ancestors actually belonged to, and in most cases, which side they fought on when that kingdom fell. Stay until number 1, because that surname is tied to a secret so dangerous that 2 English kings spent their entire reigns trying to make sure the country forgot it existed. Number 10. Godwin. From the Old English, God and wine, meaning friend of God or divine friend. It sounds like a blessing. For one family, it was closer to a curse. The Godwins were the most powerful noble house in the Kingdom of Wessex, the dominant Anglo-Saxon kingdom that had, by the 11th century, absorbed most of southern England. Earl Godwin himself rose from relatively obscure origins to become the single most powerful man in England after the king. His son was Harold Godwinson. In January 1066, Harold was crowned King of England, the last Anglo-Saxon to ever hold that title. 9 months later, at Hastings, he took an arrow to the eye, and the entire Anglo-Saxon political order collapsed in a single afternoon. If your name is Godwin, your bloodline sat on the throne of England for less than a year, and then watched that throne and that entire world get erased by a Norman invasion fleet. The next surname belonged to a kingdom so remote and so brutal that even other Anglo-Saxons considered it half foreign, a place where kings were as likely to be murdered by their own nobles as by outside invaders. Number 9. Bigod. From the Old Norman French Bigod, possibly meaning a hypocrite, or in another reading, tied to Norse settlers who swore oaths by God in a way that struck the French as excessive. Whatever the insult originally meant, the Bigod family turned it into one of the great titles of East Anglia, a kingdom that had absorbed centuries of Danish settlement before the Normans ever arrived. Roger Bigod came over with William the Conqueror and was granted vast estates across Norfolk and Suffolk, the heartland of the old East Anglian kingdom. His descendants became Earls of Norfolk and were among the barons who forced King John to sign Magna Carta in 1215, one of the only successful noble rebellions against an English king in the entire medieval period. If your name is Bigod, your bloodline helped write the document that first told an English king he was not above the law. Coming up is a name from a kingdom so far north and so violent that London barely considered it English at all, a kingdom whose earls fought their own private wars against the crown for 300 years. Number 8. Percy. From Percy in Auge in Normandy, another name that crossed the Channel in 1066 and found its true power somewhere else entirely. The Percys became Earls of Northumberland, rulers in all but name of the old Kingdom of Northumbria, the wild border territory between England and Scotland. For centuries, the Percy family was effectively a second monarchy in the north, raising private armies, fighting the Scots on their own authority, and answering to London only when it suited them. Henry Percy, nicknamed Hotspur for his relentless energy in battle, became one of the most famous warriors in English history, then turned that same energy against King Henry IV and died in open rebellion at the Battle of Shrewsbury in 1403. The crown he had once helped put in power killed him for it. If your name is Percy, your bloodline ruled a kingdom in everything but name, and eventually paid for that independence in blood. The next name comes from a kingdom that dominated the middle of England for 200 years, and the family that carried it into the Norman era would spend the next several centuries locked in a blood feud with the Percys you just heard about. Number 7. Neville. From Neuville in Normandy, New Town in Old French. Unremarkable in origin, ruthless in practice, the Nevilles rose through marriage and military service to become Earls of Westmoreland and effectively the ruling family of the old Kingdom of Mercia's northern reaches, directly bordering Percy territory. The two families despised each other for generations, and that rivalry became one of the hidden engines of the Wars of the Roses. Richard Neville, later known as Warwick the Kingmaker, was the single most powerful noble in 15th century England, a man who removed one king and installed another almost single-handedly, twice. He died on the battlefield at Barnet in 1471, killed by the very political machine he had built. If your name is Neville, your bloodline made and unmade English kings, and the family 2 names ago on this list was your ancestors' oldest enemy. Number 6 is a name tied to the ancient border kingdom of Mercia at its absolute peak, when it briefly dominated every other Anglo-Saxon kingdom in England. Number 6. De Clare, from Clare in Suffolk, though the family's true power base sat along the old Mercian frontier and the contested Welsh marshes. The Clares became one of the wealthiest and most dangerous baronial families in medieval England, holding the earldoms of Gloucester and Hertford simultaneously. Gilbert de Clare fought at the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314 as one of the senior commanders of the English army, and was killed there when the Scottish spearmen broke the English line, one of the highest-ranking nobles to die in that catastrophic defeat. The Clare fortune, built across generations of careful marriage into royal and near-royal families, eventually fed directly into the inheritance of the English crown itself. If your name is de Clare, your bloodline commanded armies on the day England suffered one of its worst military defeats in history. Before we go further, if you're finding this useful, subscribe to Origins Decoded. We publish a new video every week uncovering the hidden history behind surnames, bloodlines, and the forgotten kingdoms that shaped them. Hit subscribe so you never miss one. The next surname belonged to a family that started as household administrators and ended up holding one of the great earldoms of the old Mercian heartland, a rise almost identical to a name you may already know from Scottish history, but this time it happened in the English Midlands. Number 5. Beauchamp, from the Norman French Beauchamp, beautiful field. The Beauchamps became Earls of Warwick, sitting directly on top of the old Mercian power base in the English Midlands. Thomas Beauchamp fought at the naval battle of Sluys and later at Crecy during the 100 Years' War, 2 of the defining English victories of the 14th century. The Beauchamp family also held Warwick Castle, still standing today, one of the most complete medieval fortresses in England, built specifically to project Mercian-rooted power over the surrounding countryside. When the male Beauchamp line finally failed in the 15th century, the earldom passed by marriage to the Neville family you already heard about, folding 2 of the great Mercian-descended houses into one. If your name is Beauchamp, your bloodline built one of the castles that still defines what people imagine when they picture medieval England. Coming up is a name that didn't originate in any English kingdom at all. It arrived as a mercenary contract and stayed for 400 years of continuous warfare. Number 4. Talbot. Possibly from a Norman personal name, possibly linked to an old French word for a hunting hound, a fitting origin for a family that made its name almost entirely through relentless military service. The Talbots rose to prominence not through an ancient Anglo-Saxon kingdom, but through unbroken loyalty to the English crown during the 100 Years' War against France. John Talbot, 1st Earl of Shrewsbury, became so feared by the French that mothers reportedly invoked his name to frighten children into obedience. He fought in France for over 30 years and died in battle at Castellon in 1453, at roughly age 66, still leading a cavalry charge in what turned out to be the final battle of the entire war. If your name is Talbot, your bloodline didn't inherit a kingdom. It built a reputation so violent that an entire nation used your family name as a warning. Number 3 comes from a kingdom that once controlled its own royal mint, its own laws, and its own coastline, before that independence was absorbed piece by piece into a larger England. Number 3. Howard. Origin debated, most likely from the Old Norse Havard, High Guardian, brought into England through Danelaw settlement in East Anglia, the same Old Norse-influenced kingdom that produced the Bigod family. The Howards eventually became Dukes of Norfolk, the highest-ranking noble title in England outside the royal family itself. Thomas Howard commanded the English forces that defeated a Scottish invasion at the Battle of Flodden in 1513, killing King James IV of Scotland, the last time a reigning British monarch died in battle. 2 Howard women, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, became Queens of England under Henry VIII. Both were executed. If your name is Howard, your bloodline produced the general who killed a Scottish king and 2 queens who lost their heads to an English one. Number 2 carries the name of a kingdom that controlled the narrow crossing point to continental Europe, making it the single most fought-over stretch of land in early medieval England. Number 2, Fitzalan. From the Norman Fitz, son of, combined with the personal name Alan, son of Alan. The Fitzalans became Earls of Arundel, holding territory across the old Kingdom of Kent and neighboring Sussex, the ancient landing point for nearly every invasion of England, including the Roman, Saxon, and Norman conquests. Arundel Castle, their seat, still stands today and remains one of the longest continuously inhabited castles in England, held by the same bloodline in an unbroken line for over 850 years. Richard Fitzalan, Earl of Arundel, was one of the Lords Appellant who moved against King Richard II in 1397, part of a noble faction so bold it briefly stripped a reigning king of his authority. Richard II never forgave it and had Fitzalan executed the following year. If your name is Fitzalan, your bloodline held the gateway to England for nearly 9 centuries and once tried to strip a king of his crown for it. And now, number 1. This surname was never officially banned. No law was ever passed against it. Instead, 2 successive dynasties of English kings did something quieter and, in the long run, more effective. They spent decades making sure the true strength of this family's claim to the throne was never widely discussed, because if it had been, an entire royal dynasty might never have taken the crown at all. Number 1. Mortimer. From Mortimer in Normandy, meaning roughly Dead Sea or still water. A strange, almost ominous origin for a family that would spend 3 centuries at the exact center of English political violence. The Mortimers were marcher lords, rulers of the volatile borderlands between England and Wales, a territory so lawless the crown gave marcher families almost kingly powers just to keep some kind of order. Roger Mortimer became the lover of Queen Isabella and in 1327 helped overthrow and almost certainly orchestrate the murder of King Edward II, ruling England himself in all but name for 3 years before being executed for it. But the real secret runs through his descendants. Through marriage, the Mortimer family's bloodline carried a claim to the English throne that was, by strict hereditary law, stronger than the line of Lancastrian kings who actually held it during the 15th century. A child named Edmund Mortimer was, by blood, arguably the rightful king of England, and the Lancastrian crown knew it. He was kept in careful, comfortable, permanent custody for most of his life, watched, controlled, and quietly kept away from any possibility of raising an army. That buried claim didn't disappear. It passed down through marriage into the House of York and became the legal foundation the Yorkists later used to justify tearing the crown away from the Lancastrians entirely, igniting the Wars of the Roses. If your name is Mortimer, your bloodline had a stronger legal claim to the English throne than the kings who were actually sitting on it, and the crown spent a generation making sure that fact stayed quiet. 10 surnames, 10 kingdoms, 10 corridors leading back through Wessex, Mercia, Northumbria, East Anglia, Kent, and the contested Welsh marches, back to a time before England was one country at all, when your ancestors' loyalty belonged to a king who no longer exists and a kingdom that no longer has a name on any modern map. Your surname is not just a name, it is a border, it is an allegiance, it is a claim someone in your bloodline was once willing to fight and sometimes die to defend. Drop your surname in the comments and tell us which medieval kingdom you think your family came from. And if you already know the specific story your family carried down through the centuries, tell us, because those stories deserve to be heard. If you made it to the end of this video, subscribe to Origins Decoded. Every week we go deeper into the vanished kingdoms hidden inside the names people carry without knowing what they mean. The next video is already waiting for you.